Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Top 10 Reporting Options for Dynamics GP 2016. My name is Alvin Liu, and I am the Los Angeles Region GP and CPM Practice Manager for FMT. Thank you to everyone for attending NVER 2016 in the cloud. For your information, this session is being recorded and will be made available to all attendees after the conference. Nonetheless, though, if you guys have questions, please feel free to type them in the chat, as I'll be trying to address those questions in the same sections that they were asked in. But there will be a section at the end for questions if they're not relevant to any specific section. So the purpose of this presentation is really to highlight the wealth of reporting options that are available within the Dynamics GP platform. Many current users of Dynamics GP really only scratch the surface when it comes to the reporting options that are available and being able to access the information that they spend so much time putting in. So why is reporting important? Well, reporting is really the reason why we work so hard to put pristine data into our ERP system. It's why we spend so much time tracking all of this data. It's for that end result. It's for that report, that piece of paper, that screenshot at the end that can help us to understand all of this information that we're putting in. Now, Microsoft understands this and offers many ways to get the data out of the system, including a few new features within the Dynamics GP 2016 application. Now, throughout the course of this presentation, I'm going to focus on really the what and the why. What I mean by that is I'm going to describe the reporting options that are available to you guys as they exist within the GP application and why you should use them. But I won't necessarily go into the how in great detail, meaning I won't necessarily describe in gruesome detail how to set up or configure any of these reporting options. If you guys have questions on the details on configuration or setup, you can bring those questions to me after the presentation or contact your FMT existing account representative to get some consulting assistance with that. By the end of this presentation, I'm really hoping that each of you will not only have a better understanding of all the reporting options available within Dynamics GP, but also come away with some inspiration for the types of reporting that you want to do from your ERP system, some of the things that you can do from your ERP system, and use that as a basis of knowledge to diversify into reporting that is specific to your industry or organization. So this presentation is really going to be split into two sections. Half of the time I'm going to spend talking about reporting options within the GP application, and half the time I'm going to spend talking about reporting options that are available to users outside of GP. Now, really what I mean by inside and outside is reporting options that are available requiring a GP user license, and reporting options that are available without needing to take up a GP user license space. Now, that doesn't mean that those reporting options will come free to you without having to purchase a GP user license. Some of the reporting options available to you outside the GP application will require additional security or user setup or additional licensing. So really the idea is to be mindful of the implications of the two and the types of users that you would need to either assign to within GP reporting options versus outside of GP reporting options. So starting with reporting options within Dynamics GP. The first option is commonly referred to as out-of-the-box GP reporting. Now, it's referred to as out-of-the-box because, as you might expect, it's available to you, GP users, out of the box without any additional configuration or setup. Now, because they're available out of the box and they're frequently what users associate with GP reporting, there are some misconceptions or misconnotations on the reporting that's available out of Dynamics GP. Out-of-the-box reporting is available through the report section of each of the modules homepage. And when you open up each report, you're presented with a list of configuration settings that allow you to choose things like filters and ranges. And when you generate the report report screen output looks a little bit like this screenshot that I've shown here. This is the GL trial balance report. Now, the benefit of running reports out of the box is that they can be run quickly with saved settings, so there's no need to reset up a report every time if you're happy with the report that you're generating. And the other advantage of using out-of-the-box GP reports is that there's some special messaging that's embedded in some of these reports. For example, one often used out-of-the-box report is the GL edit list. So if you're posting a batch and you get a batch error, well, go back and generate the edit list from that batch, which is an out-of-the-box report. And in addition to showing you the transactions within that batch, it will also show you any batch errors that may be preventing you from posting that batch. So out-of-the-box reports can be good for checking your work. However, the misconceptions on GP reporting come probably from the fact that out-of-the-box reports are not formatted quite as nicely as we would expect from a lot of modern reports. And the formatting of the report can be difficult to customize and really only customizable by GP's proprietary report writer tool. In addition to that, the report cannot be easily exported into another format, especially if you intend to export it into Excel format for further data manipulation. So because of those two cons, misconceptions of GP reporting has kind of stemmed from that, specifically around the fact that all GP reporting is inflexible or poorly formatted or difficult to use. But as I'm going to show you throughout the rest of this presentation, out-of-the-box reports are really only one reporting option that are available, and really if you use it for the purpose that it was intended for, out-of-the-box reports can be quite useful as well. So in summary, out-of-the-box GP reports are really ideal for obtaining general information quickly, for regenerating reports that you have previously set up, and also to double-check your work, taking advantage of some of the special messaging that's embedded in the reports out of the box. Number 2, inquiry windows. So inquiry windows are windows that are available within each module of Dynamics GP within the inquiry section of each module homepage. Now, though inquiry windows aren't really reports as you might expect them, they're also a useful way to get information out of the system. And one of the most common ways of getting information out of Dynamics GP at the end user level. Now, the inquiry windows function as sort of a question-answer type of feedback. So in this particular window, the payables transaction inquiry, it's going to ask me what vendor I want to look up and then give me some limited selection as far as filters and ranges. And what it's going to return is a list of all the items that fit that criteria. Now, the other type of inquiry window will show you the details based off of a transaction, and many of the inquiry windows look exactly like their transaction entry counterparts. So inquiry windows can be good for getting detailed information on the transactions that you've entered and to quickly view all the data related to the certain filter that you applied to that inquiry window. Now, as I mentioned before, inquiry windows exist for every GP module and can be saved as shortcuts for individual users for easy access. And in addition to that, inquiry windows do not require any additional installation or configuration. So in summary, Inquiry windows are really ideal for looking up specific information quickly, specific details with it regarding a single transaction, and providing that information without the need for any detailed manipulation or customization. Number 3, all-in-one views. Now we talked a little bit about inquiry. All-in-one views can be thought of as a kind of an extension of inquiries, but it's worth highlighting here because all-in-one views are a new feature that is available in Dynamics GP 2016. As of this moment, all-in-one views are available for the purchasing, sales, and inventory modules and can be accessed either from the module homepage or from the customer or vendor maintenance window, as well as numerous inquiry windows and navigation lists. Now, really the difference between inquiry windows and the all-in-one view here is the ability to see more than one transaction's worth of information in one screen. So the big benefit of using, for example, in this screenshot, the purchasing all-in-one view is the ability to select a vendor here and see all transactions related to that vendor across all transaction types. Now what that means is that of the 5 transaction types or document types that I have listed here, I have taken all 5 of those inquiry windows and put them in one. Now you may think that would be information overload, but in fact what we can do is look at specific transactions within the flow of the document types and isolate the transactions to the ones related to the one we're looking at. For example, if I was a customer service rep, what I could potentially do is come look up a payment that a customer made when the customer called in and instantly be able to see, based on that payment, what invoice that was tied to and what items that the customer ordered from me, and then potentially any returns that were applied after the fact. Similar to this purchasing all-in-one window, for example, if I selected one of the payments here in this list, I'd be able to see exactly which invoice that payment was applied to, which receipt that invoice came from, and then the originating purchase order. So the idea here is that instead of having to go to 5 windows, I can look it all up in one window, and then it works in combination with inquiry windows after that, meaning that if I do click on any of these transactions, it'll drill back to the inquiry of that transaction to give me that further detail if I need it. So in summary, all-in-one views are really ideal for quickly finding all documents related to a specific transaction for inquiry purposes. But what it does not do is provide an aggregated view or a formatted reporting of any kind. Number 4, Smartlists. Now, Smartlists are probably the most commonly used GP reporting option out there, and that's for good reason. Smartlists are probably regarded as the most flexible and robust of reporting tools. What it is a simple table structure that can be accessed off of the GP homepage, and within the Smartlist application, it breaks out the Smartlist by module. So there's groups of default Smartlists based on every module that exists in Dynamics GP. Now those Smartlists are further customizable. So in this screenshot here, I have the payables transaction Smartlist. And by default, it comes with some fields such as voucher number, vendor ID, document type, document date, and so on. However, I can go up to the column section and add additional information to this Smart List, or I can go to search and filter this Smart List to only the results that I'm looking for. So there's some user level customizability within the Smart List application. Now, in addition to that, there is also further customization available through the Smartlist Designer tool, available in, I believe, GP 2013 R2 and on. And what that allows us to do is create a Smart List for not only the default data sets that are available within Dynamics GP, but really any data set that we can create a SQL view for. Now this may require a little bit more technical knowledge in order to pull the data into a SQL view and then pull that view into the Smartlist window. However, that really means that the sky's the limit for what data we can show within the Smartlist itself. Now, a special note to anybody who's potentially a business intelligence analyst or a report writer in this regard, if you create your own custom Smartlist, the ability to add columns after the fact is dependent on the data columns that you pull in your query. So, for example, if I were to write a query that had 10 columns, I could choose to display 5 of those columns by default when I open this Smartlist each time. And then the other 5 would become options that I could add to this Smartlist by going to the column section later on. Now, another note on security in here. Smartlist security is based off GP security, as is all the within GP reporting options. But Smartlist can be specific to user or even company based on the Smartlist preferences that each user saves. So if I were to come in here and select a specific set of filters or maybe add some columns that I like for my specific use, I can save that Smartlist just for myself. So it can be user specific, user customizable, and user specific. However, I could choose to share that with some colleagues or share that with all Dynamics GP users if I so chose. So in summary, Smartlists are really ideal for creating a table that's easy, that quickly generates information, and that's easy to export into Excel for data manipulation. Now, a special note on Excel, exporting to Excel in GP 2015 R2 and on will give you the ability to generate a refreshable Excel template, meaning that if you need to further refresh that data later on, you don't have to come back to the Smartlist to pull that data. The Excel document that gets exported will actually have a data connection to your GP database, and it will pull the data directly into the spreadsheet. But we'll cover Excel reporting, or refreshable Excel reporting, in a little bit, and I'll talk a little bit about the advantages of using refreshable Excel rather than exporting from a Smartlist each time. Number 5, and this will be the last reporting option within GP. Navigation lists. So navigation lists is one of probably the most overlooked features within the Dynamics GP platform. I would say that a lot of you may have never even seen this window before, but it may surprise you to know that this is available to each and every one of you out of the box within the GP platform. What navigation lists are is really an extension of functionality of the Smartlist functionality. You can access them on the left in the navigation pane, so that's the pane that you see the selection of each module. Well, above that, there's a list of what you could probably relate to Smartlist as far as the naming convention, but actually each of those options are navigation lists, and each of those will give you a screen that looks somewhat like this. Now, how does the navigation list work? Well, in the center, we have actually a very familiar interface. This screenshot here is of the sales order transaction navigation list, but if you look at the center, that list there, or that table, is really the sales order transaction smart list. All right, it's the same data. Now, because it's the smart list, I can do basically all of the same things that I could do in the smart list. Add columns, add filters, sort the data, export the data. However, the difference between navigation lists and smart lists is the additional windows that you see now surrounding that smart list. So at the bottom, we have what we call the preview pane. And the preview pane allows you to highlight a transaction and get some information quickly on the details of that transaction. So within the smart list, if I wanted to see that same information, I would have to drill down on that smart list, which would open up the inquiry window for that transaction. But that can be cumbersome, and it requires looking at two separate windows instead of seeing all the information you really need at the bottom of the screen. At the top, we have what we call the action pane, and this is really where navigation lists start to shine. The action pane gives you the ability to take actions on the items within the list below, meaning that if I wanted to select 4 orders and process them all to invoice, all I would need to do is check the boxes in the list below and click the invoice button, and it'll send those orders to invoice. Now, if I wanted to do that the conventional way within a smart list, I would have to double click on each order within the smart list window, which would open up the order transaction entry and then process it to invoice from there. So navigation lists can be quite a powerful tool for taking actions on a number of items within a list at a time. In addition to that, there's no restrictions on ranges for which transactions you want to affect. I simply go down the list and check the boxes, or I apply a filter and I check the boxes from there. But if you have experience running out-of-the-box GP reports, you'll find that sometimes the ranges don't necessarily jive with the data set that you're trying to pull. It doesn't fall necessarily into a convenient data range. So this kind of gives you the flexibility to pick and choose which transactions you actually want to pull here. Now, a note on customizability. Navigation lists are actually customizable by the user, so to a limited fashion. I mentioned before, similar to smart lists, we can add or remove columns, we can change the rows around, filter, sort, but we can actually go to the preview pane and add or remove data from there, and we can go to the action pane at the top and add or remove some relevant actions from the pane above. Now, there's actually a third-party tool, commonly known as Smartlist Builder, but actually packaged with another tool aptly named Navigation List Builder, which will allow us to fully customize the navigation list view. Now, what that means is that I can take, for example, a sales order transaction smart list in the data view below and create actions at the top or previews at the bottom that may not necessarily be related to sales order transactions, because those are useful to me. So you can imagine, with the flexibility of being able to customize the navigation list to any sort of actions or any sort of preview that you want, navigation lists function as really a mini dashboard for Dynamics GP users that may have a specific functional role or very specific functions that they use over and over and really do not have a need for any additional functionality outside of navigation lists. So in summary, navigation lists are really ideal for users that have very specific uses within Dynamics GP. It can be customized so that all of those actions are available to them, all within a convenient, attractive window. And it's useful for taking actions on a set of data that may not easily fall within the data range, and the ability to take action on a number of transactions when otherwise you would have to process those transactions one at a time. Now, as I mentioned before, we're going to split this presentation really into 2 halves. So the second half is going to address mainly reporting out options outside of the Dynamics GP platform. Before I go there, did we have any questions? If you have questions, like I said, feel free to type them in the chat as we go. If I see that it's relevant to the section that I'm talking about, I will go ahead and answer the question in that section to kind of keep all of that information within the same container. But once again, I will have a second question section at the end, so feel free to save your questions till the end as well. All right. let's go ahead and keep going then. So on to reporting options outside of GP. Now, as we get outside of GP, security is going to be a bigger concern because the user security within GP isn't necessarily going to apply to reports that we run outside of Dynamics GP. And frequently, the reporting options will have their own set of security to be concerned about. But I'll try to address that in each section as we get there. First off, one of the most robust applications that exists is Excel, and Refreshable Excel is really the next evolution of using Excel for reporting out of any system. Now, GP is no different. GP, with the advancement of Dynamics GP 2016, has created an OData service or an OData feed that will allow you to push data into an Excel report or an Excel template without having to hit the SQL Server directly. So that's a change from prior to GP 2016, where refreshable reports did exist, where we have to connect to the SQL Server and pull data down that way. But that was a bit of a security concern. You know, people generally don't like to expose their SQL servers externally, so those reports would only be available if you had a close connection to the SQL Server. But with the advancement of GP 2016 and the OData service, now we can use that data feed to populate Excel reports. And really, populating the Excel reports from live Dynamics GP data makes refreshable Excel reports just as good as any reports that you may generate out of the system. Now, what do refreshable Excel reports really give us? Well, if you find yourself exporting reports from Smartlists very often, one of the things that you may consider is taking that Smartlist and putting it in refreshable Excel. Now, putting a Smartlist in refreshable Excel has been made a lot easier with the advancement of the Smartlist Designer and being able to export the Excel as a refreshable document. But if you wanted to create a document based off of that refreshable Excel report or create a custom refreshable Excel report, Excel does allow you to create a report based on an existing view in the SQL database. So again, we're getting a little bit back into the realm of technical expertise, but if there was a SQL view that was deployed within the GP database, you could pull that view into a refreshable Excel report to dump the data as a tab in your Excel report, and then any sort of calculation or data manipulation that you would need to do, any sort of formatting or anything else to give you the view that you want can be done within the native Excel functionality without the need for learning any proprietary report writers or any sort of complicated technical expertise once the data is already in your spreadsheet. And refreshable Excel reports function just like workbooks after that. You can access it by sharing that document within Excel. You can access it by putting the document in a network share somewhere or by loading it to SharePoint. Now, on the topics of security, refreshable Excel reports will require credentials in order to refresh the data in the report. Now, those can either be OData service data feed credentials, or they can be SQL Server credentials if we're hitting the databases directly. So each user will need to input that login or those credentials when they refresh the data. Now, we can save the credentials within the spreadsheet itself, but that is not a recommended best practice. In addition to that, the server or the credential type can either be Windows Trusted Authentication or SQL Server Authentication, meaning closely related to the Dynamics GP user logins that you would use to enter the application itself. So in summary, refreshable Excel reports are really great for users that are proficient in Excel. They're great for users that want to see Smartlist data but don't want to have to export that Smartlist constantly. and they're great for users that don't necessarily want to access the Dynamics GP application, but want access to the GP application data in Excel form for further manipulation or just to query on an ad hoc basis. Number 2, SSRS, or SQL Server Reporting Services. Now, SQL Server Reporting Services is not strictly a Dynamics GP unique service, but because Dynamics GP is based on a SQL Server backbone, SQL Server Reporting Services is available to almost all Dynamics GP users. Now, SQL Server Reporting Services, again, is going to require a little bit more technical expertise in order to set up these reports. So we're getting into the realm of customization being a significant consideration. However, the upside of that, the pro, is that if we're going to do a lot of customization, the sky's the limit as far as what these reports can look like or what they can do. So being able to create a report that's fully customized to your industry or your organization based off of Dynamics GP data with whatever formatting you need is the big advantage of using SSRS. Now, Dynamics GP does come with a bunch of out-of-the-box SSRS reports that we can deploy to your report server, but those frequently require a little touching up because they're out of the box and everyone's GP configuration is slightly different. So I would encourage you to go and test those before running them in production. Now, access for SSRS reports come by the form of a web browser. So the SQL reporting services is set up on your SQL server, but the reports are served out through the report services portal. And then within the portal itself, we can deploy individual reports that you can open and run within your web browser. In addition to that, SSRS reports can also be created to send out on a schedule, either via email, attached in an email, or dropped in a network location. So if your users aren't necessarily comfortable coming into the report server portal to access their reports, they can get the reports with all their formatting, with all the complicated calculations or customizations that are included, sent directly to their inbox at a regular scheduled time. Now, security in SSRS is really handled within the report portal itself. So within the portal, users can either be given access to certain reports or given access to none of the reports and had the reports sent directly to their inbox. This security is unique from Dynamics GP security and is more related to SQL security. So for any IT folks out there, that's the distinction. So really, in summary, SSRS reports is the magician of reports. We can make SQL Server reports do whatever we want and send out whenever we want. And so it's perfect for those complicated reports or reports that no other reporting option is going to solve for us. We would recommend deploying them in SSRS and using the report distribution options that are available from there. All right, number 3 on our list, Management Reporter. Management Reporter is the financial reporting tool that comes packaged with Dynamics GP nowadays. It's a replacement of the loved and lost FRX for those of you that used that before. And Management Reporter is really the recommended way of getting financial reports out of Dynamics GP. You may have noticed that while I was running through the reporting options within GP, there wasn't a report that I pulled up that would really be ideal for generating a formatted balance sheet or a formatted income statement. Well, that's why Management Reporter comes packaged with your Dynamics GP application. Now, although it's packaged with Dynamics GP, Management Reporter is a separate application on its own that is integrated with Dynamics GP data, meaning that it's a separate install, a separate client install for any of your users that are going to be designing reports, and the security for Management Reporter is handled separately within Management Reporter itself, and it does not rely on GP security. Reports are built through a proprietary report builder within the Management Reporter application, and the structure of that is loosely based off of the same structure that FRX was. So you build row definitions to specify the format of the rows on your reports. You build column definitions to specify what columns you want to see in combination with those rows. And to simplify things a little, you put those two together, and the intersection between the rows and the columns is what gives you your reports. Now, Management Reporter report writer tool can be a little bit of a learning curve to pick up, but once you've learned it, it does a good job of the job that it was built for, essentially, which is financial report writing. Now, one note on the reporting out of Management Reporter is that it does GL data only. All right? So I can't emphasize this enough. It's strictly for financial reporting. It will only pull GL data. That's not to say that I can't pull in some subledger related data, such as the vendor that a transaction was associated with, but at the end of the day, you're looking at the GL transaction. Even if you can see the vendor that it originated from, you're still looking at only the GL. Now, a couple mentions on report distribution. Management Reporter allows us to distribute reports through a few different options. One option that does not exist, that I get a lot of question about, is the ability to generate a report to Excel. Yes, you heard me correctly. You cannot generate a Management Reporter report directly to Excel. Now, that's not to say you can't get it in Excel at some point, but Management Reporter generates its reports to one of two places for user consumption. One option is the Management Reporter Report Viewer application, which is kind of a twin application to the Report Designer application that I've been describing and that you see in this screenshot. Essentially, what the Viewer application allows you to do is open up a report, look at the report contents, and then drill down to any of the details that the report that is included in that report, all the way down to the level where you can drill back to that transaction within Dynamics GP. Now, the reason that the applications are separate in such a way is that Management Reporter security allows you to restrict the user access to either the report viewer or the report designer applications. So you can have report users that are viewing reports within the viewer application but never having to touch the designer or mess with any of the formats or the configuration of those reports. In addition to that, the second way that you can consume Management Reporter reports is through the web viewer. The web viewer is basically the report viewer application, but within a web browser. So as we move more and more into a cloud-based environment, we want to get away from installing applications if we can, and so not having to install a Management Reporter report viewer and still view those reports with drill down capability, that functionality comes with the web viewer application. So essentially, when you generate a report from Management Reporter, that generates to a browser or to a link, and that link can be shared with your colleagues, emailed out, and as long as the user that opens it has the appropriate security set up in Management Reporter, getting back to the all-important security, that user will be able to see all the information within that report within their web browser. Now, once it's open in the web browser, they have the ability to then download that to Excel or print it out or filter, sort, and drill down, but the security is handled at the web browser level. So in summary, Management Reporter is really specifically a formatted financial report generator, and it's really formatted financials for executive level users or stakeholders, and not really for ad hoc purposes, although you could use it for ad hoc purposes. The reports themselves take a bit of time to generate, although they can be generated on a schedule. So they're really not ideal for, making a change and checking it, and making a change and checking it, because that could be quite tedious. It's really ideal for month-end reporting or year-end reporting or whatever sort of financial reporting obligations that you may have. Number 4, Power BI. Now you may say Power BI isn't exactly related to Dynamics GP, but with the advancements within Dynamics GP 2016, Power BI is going to become one of the prime reporting options in combination with Dynamics GP 2016. So first, what we're looking at here in the screenshot is Power BI reports embedded in the Dynamics GP homepage. These reports are created within the Power BI web dashboard and then linked to the Dynamics GP homepage, similar to the way that we used to be able to do Business Analyzer or SSRS charts within the Dynamics GP homepage. Now I should mention at this point that Power BI is an additional licensing cost on top of your Office 365 license. It's something like $10 or so on top of your normal Office 365 licensing. But what that gets you is the ability to create these sort of graphics in a web dashboard, pulling data out of Dynamics GP using the OData data feed, and then displaying it either within the Dynamics GP homepage here or sticking with the theme of reporting options outside of Dynamics GP, view those same dashboards on the Power BI online web dashboard, which now gives you the ability to see Dynamics GP data on the go on any device in graphical form. So you can kind of see where I'm going with this. This functionality is not necessarily for a user that's going to be heads down in the GP application all the time, but maybe for the sales rep traveling on the road that wants to see how the sales are going, or maybe for the executive who's on the road that wants to see, revenue, expense numbers, that kind of thing. It's for users that don't necessarily want to digest a whole lot of numbers, that maybe want to just be able to see data at a glance, especially visually. Now, security for Power BI is handled within Power BI application. So Power BI accesses GP data through the GP OData data feed, and then once it's brought into the dashboard itself, that dashboard will restrict users to the data that they're able to see. Or if we're looking at the Dynamics GP homepage here and the graphics that are embedded in the homepage, the security within the homepage will give them access to either the graphics here or make them unavailable in the homepage. So in summary, Power BI graphics are really ideal for users that don't want to see a lot of numbers, that just want to see graphics or the data out of GP at a glance. It can be made available within the homepage of the application, so it can be useful for users that have a use of being in the system but also want to see that at-a-glance view. But really it's perfect for users that are on the road that don't have access to maybe even a computer, because you can access the Power BI dashboard on your mobile device and see this updated information on the go and at a glance. Finally, number 5, third-party CPM tools. Now, CPM stands for Corporate Performance Management. What that really means is it's a subset of business intelligence that deals with financial reporting, analysis, and budgeting. Now, we talked a little bit about Manager Reporter previously. That was the financial reporting tool that comes packaged with Dynamics GP. But third-party CPM tools really start to expand on that functionality depending on what specific needs that you have. So one big shortcoming of Manager Reporter is that it doesn't include any functionality for budgeting. So as a financial reporting tool, it's able to produce data and produce budget versus actual data. But if you have an existing budget, there's no way using Manager Reporter to consolidate departmental budgets or take that departmental budget and load it back into GP. In addition to that, as I mentioned before, Manager Reporter does not do any kind of sub-ledger reporting. It reports only off of GL data. whereas third-party CPM tools are frequently able to pull data from all Dynamics GP modules and even mix that data together for analysis purposes. In addition to that, GP is frequently used to store a lot of operational data that may not necessarily be ideal in an ERP system. And we store that data in a number of different ways, potentially using things like unit accounts or user-defined fields. And we store them because we want to use that data for analysis purposes on our financial reporting or operational reporting. Within third-party CPM tools, they give us additional room to store that kind of information, either within the setup of the third-party tool itself or within a data warehouse that allows us to track that as a statistic, and then sticking with the theme of combining those data types, give us further analysis based on our financials versus our operational data. Now, FMT works with two primary third-party CPM tools, and I'll call them out by name today. The first that we work with is called Profix, and Profix is really ideal for users that have significant financial or complicated financial reporting needs. Profix emphasizes multi-currency translation and multi-company consolidation that can be complicated, and it gives it everything to you in kind of a convenient dashboard. So all reports that are generated out of Profix can be viewed in this dashboard, and report construction is relatively straightforward if it does require a little setup and configuration to start. The other third-party reporting software that we work with is BI360. BI360 kind of sits on the other end of our reporting spectrum. There's no proprietary interface to work with. BI360 is actually an Excel add-in. And essentially what it allows you to do is pull Dynamics GP data into a spreadsheet similar to the way Refreshable Excel works, but BI360 adds on that functionality by giving you the ability to create expanding rows, expanding columns, and then more importantly, gives you the ability using that spreadsheet to save data back. So if I was doing a budget, I could enter data onto that spreadsheet, hit the save button, and that would get saved back to my database. BI360 also comes with a data warehouse module. The data warehouse module is what I mentioned earlier that allows us to store operational data within our databases to use for reporting purposes later on. The data warehouse also allows us to do complex consolidations and multi-currency translations within BI360 as well. So that gives you some options as far as which CPM tool to go with. If you guys need assistance with choosing a CPM tool that's right for you, feel free to reach out to your account executive to schedule a consultation. We'll be happy to walk you through the pros and cons of each and perhaps schedule a demo for you. So in summary, third-party CPM tools, although they are at additional licensing costs, they really expand on the functionality of reporting quite a bit, especially financial reporting that normally is done in Excel, even with the advancement of reporting and all the options that I talked about previously. Budgets, for example, almost always done in Excel, even though all of the data that we dumped out is, through Smartlists or through Management Reporter. We still do these consolidations and tabs of budget data. Well, third-party CPM tools addresses things like that. So being able to enter your budget data within the CPM tool rather than within Excel, and then having that do all the consolidation for you and produce the consolidated budget, that's where these third-party tools shine. All right. Now I know we went through quite a bit all at once, but hopefully you guys have been able to kind of see the plethora of reporting options that are available to you guys. And mostly available already out of the box, with some of these requiring additional configuration and some requiring additional licensing. If this has helped you, inspire you in any way to take that information and apply it to your own organization or industry, great. If there's anything that FMT can assist with, again, please feel free to reach out to an account executive to schedule a consultation. At this point, let me open it up to questions. I know we've got a couple in here already, so I'll go ahead and address those. So let's see. Connie Grant asks, is the navigation list in older version and where is it listed? So navigation lists are available all the way back to, I believe, GP10. GP10. And navigation lists are available to you, again, in the navigation pane on the left-hand side of every single GP module. What I mean by that is when you open up GP, you're in the home, then you click on, for example, sales, and then you're on the sales homepage, right? We're familiar with all the windows on the sales homepage. Well, if you look on the pane on the left, above where you selected the modules, there's a list of selections there. And if you click on any of those, that will take you to that navigation list. Now again, it's available in versions GP10 and on. Let's see, Lisa says, on page 6 of the manual it asks to enter Smartlist ID. How do I get a list of these? I'm not quite sure what you're referring to on the Smartlist IDs, but Lisa, all those smart lists that are available out of the box are available when you open up the smart list window and expand all of the folders on the left. Those are the smart list IDs, I suppose you'd call them. Each of those smart lists is actually a pre-deployed view within the Dynamics GP database, company database. So if you needed to find the view that that smart list is based off of, it's that name. So the account smart list is a view that's just called accounts. All right. So if that's the smart list ID that you're thinking of, then it's just the name. What you see is what you get there. All right. Any other questions? I'll go ahead and give you guys a couple more minutes to type. All right. If you guys had a question that I wasn't able to answer, or if you guys think of any further questions after the fact, feel free to reach out to me directly. My contact information will be shared out to you guys when this presentation is shared and with this slideshow. Or as I mentioned before, you can always feel free to reach out to your account executive and schedule a consultation with a consulting resource if necessary. Thank you, everybody, for attending Top 10 Reporting Options for Dynamics GP 2016, and thank you all for attending NVerge 2016 in the cloud this year.